VigilanteWilliamson here with a very simple question, and that is, what in the world is going on with the game engine Unity? A couple weeks ago, they announced a controversial and probably not entirely legal new way of monetizing their engine, in which everybody who used their engine for a game will be subject to an installation fee of 20 cents per installation for customers, which means if you had a very cheap game on Steam and you sold it for $1 and you had a customer that installed it in 6 places, you're in a hole. And not only would that be for future games and current games being developed, but it would be for prior games that have already been released using the Unity platform. And that's the part I'm not sure if it's entirely legal. And in fact, you might be in one or two camps because they've obviously gone back on that decision. Maybe they got enough legal pressure where, hey, they were going to deal with a class action lawsuit from a bunch of different developers, including some heavy hitters, and wanted to walk that part back. And or they already knew that they would have issues implementing what they announced, including tracking all the installs, and they wanted to give out like a poison pill. So then when they come with this alternative a la New Coca-Cola Classic, it seems a lot better. It doesn't seem as bad as if they would have proposed it on its own. Either way, it's going to lead to a lot of developers not trusting Unity and not using Unity in the future. And Unity is, been a engine that developed a lot of indie games over the past few years, or the past decade or so. But all is not lost, and what I'm hoping for, if there's a silver lining to this dark cloud of video game developer greed, is that it leads more people to the free open source game engine Godot, or Godot, which I may pronounce both ways depending on how I feel throughout the rest of this video. In any event, it's a completely open source engine. It's an editable engine, meaning you can have the source code and change things as you like. It has its own language, and plus I think C# or C+, I might just put it on the screen, I can't remember, can also be used. So people with prior experience with either Unity or Unreal may find that they can do a lot of things that they're familiar with. And even if the engine isn't currently up to snuff, which I'm not sure, I'm not a game developer. I did actually develop a game for Android using Godot maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and it actually can still be found on the internet, believe it or not, even though I didn't pay all the Android fees. So that's where I'm familiar with the engine. But even if it isn't quite up to the industry standard yet, my hope is that with all the sour feelings towards Unity, it leads a lot of developers, including major developers, to give Godot a chance. And once you have major games developed in Godot, that means there's going to be more users, and more of a user base and more of a community will lead more people to using it. This very video has his voiceover recorded in a program called Reaper, which is kind of the redheaded stepchild of music dolls. That said, after years and years of being out and having a very fervent community and a lot of educational sources on it, it is a doll that has released major label albums, and albums that you may love. Even if there are bigger platforms like Pro Tools, Logic, Ableton, and FL Studio, Reaper still exists. It's still a very widely used program, and it's a very widely community supported program. There's always information. If you have trouble with something, you can go on the Reddit, on the forum, and find information. And I had a similar experience with Godot when I was using it, when I tried my hand at game development. And I'm hoping, because Unity was responsible for a kind of an indie game renaissance from the late 2000s up until present day, I'm hoping that we can have something similar with Godot. And in this case, it'll be completely open source. You own everything you make. No issues with the developers coming and trying to scam you. And if there's a wider community base, there's more information on it, it'll help the development of the engine itself, and it could be a little bit more user friendly and get to the point where it's ready for prime time. Now, I'm not a game developer, so I don't know either way whether it's ready for prime time, but I definitely think if the community grows around it, it will be, and that could lead to more indie games, more independent people making games, and better games being made, because the information that people need to fix their bugs or whatever issues they have will be more available because there's more people using the platform. So I'm hoping that is the silver lining. I don't see a lot of people talking about Godot and pushing Godot, but let me be a champion for it. I think it would be a very cool thing for a lot of developers to have an open source platform to use, and for that open source platform to be competitive with the Unities and the Unreals of the world, at least more so than it probably is right now. I know it's still a pretty big community, so if you're a part of the Godot community, please, let me know what you think. I'm hoping more people use Godot. I'm hoping more people get pushed towards it with all these greedy bullshit tactics that Unity is pushing, and I hope it leads to better games. I think there's clearly an issue with modern AAA development, and I think more indie development and more indie developers will be the best foot forward in changing that. So I'm hoping in this bullshit that Unity tried to pull, more people go to Godot, more people learn about Godot, Godot becomes a better engine, and it becomes easier and easier for independent developers to develop games, the games that we love, and not have to rely on these AAA assholes on top of it. And that's what makes this so sad, because Unity, even though it can make, AAA quality games, I'm not trying to disparage the engine, even though the tactics used are very scummy. But it was something that a lot of indie developers use to get their game out. And for that to go away, because it will go away for a lot of people. I don't think a lot of people are going to be able to trust Unity with their game, with their heart and soul. I'm hoping Godot can rise from this BS and actually make the system completely better, because it's completely free and it's completely open source. But you tell me what you think. Have you ever even heard of Godot or Godot? What do you think about Unity and their scummy tactics as far as monetization? Like I said, I don't think their first plan of retroactively monetizing stuff that had already been installed under a different terms of service was going to hold up. I think they were going to deal with a lot of lawsuits from a lot of developers. But even what they have now, 2.5% of every game over $1 million. What do you think about that? And do you think that's going to hinder or cause indie developers to not deal with them, especially because of all the headache that we went through over the past weeks in the first place? Even if you don't think that's the worst stipulation, because it's not the end of the world. I know Unreal has a similar thing, but even if you don't think that's the worst stipulation, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of developers who just don't trust the process with how scummy they've been. So you tell me what you think in the comments. I really appreciate it. If you like the video, please like the video. If you're so obliged to share and subscribe, please do that. But even if you do none of these things, thank you for watching. Thank you for your time. Good night and God bless. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.